In our video titled Compound Angles Using the PantoRouter Joinery Machine, we built the three-legged stool designed by Matthias Vondel, and after building a couple of them, following his plans exactly, we decided to make some taller stools using the same general design. We used our diamond-shaped mortise and tenon template, and we found a great way to locate the seat to the legs. In our first build, we really struggled with the glue up and setup for repetition, so we built several jigs to build the taller version. One was to establish the angle of the stretchers, and another is the leg angle, which we used in a couple of different ways. We used this jig to cut the round tenons to join the legs to the seat, and we also used it to cut the mortises for the stretchers. We used a sample piece cut from our leg stock to establish the thickness so we could center our mortises in the leg and then cut the diamond-shaped mortises. We never tire of watching the bit break out when cutting through mortises. The stretchers have tenons where they meet in the middle, which we cut before we did any of the shaping of the pieces. We cut the mortises off camera, then set up for the tenons. As explained in our last video, these tenons are clipped due to the angle of the joinery. We used our jig and a stop to make sure that all of the pieces were exactly the same. The other end of the stretcher joins to the leg and is also angled in two directions. We used our diamond template for a bit of flair, but this was before we introduced the vertical template holder adapter, so we had to go to some great lengths to modify the template for vertical use. If you're interested in seeing how we did this, we've included an explanation at the end of this video. Once all of the diamond-shaped tenons were cut vertically, we clamped them horizontally to the table to cut the 1/8-inch slots for decorative wedges. We could have more easily cut these vertically with the vertical template holder adapter, but we didn't have it at the time. Next, we set up a jig to shape the stretcher pieces on the router table. With all of our stretcher pieces looking good, we started the glue-up process with our new clamping cauls. Thankfully, this went really well this time. When the stretchers were out of clamps, we played with some ideas for shaping the legs using black electrical tape. This is a trick we learned from Michael Fortune. It's valuable to visualize how much or how little shaping is most pleasing. After we had shaped the legs and glued them to the stretchers, we had a little problem with one of the wedges. We had cut them a bit too thick and tapped them in a bit too aggressively, and it caused the leg to split, but it was an easy fix. We just removed the wedge, squirted glue into the crack, and clamped it overnight. The next day we inserted the slimmer decorative wedge, and all was good. We wanted a triangular seat to match the three-legged theme, so after finding a shape we liked, we calculated where the legs should hit. This turned out to be a little more difficult than we'd hoped, because the week or so that we'd been working on the project, the wood had moved a bit, and no two stools had precisely the same hole spacing for the legs. We worked out a really cool way to locate the legs on each stool extremely accurately. We had already cut our round tenons or integral dowels on the ends of the legs and sized them for a snug fit to a hole that we cut using a 1-inch Forstner bit. We used the same bit to drill holes in 3 little plywood blocks, then applied double-sided tape to one side and slipped it onto each leg with the tape up. We carefully turned the stool upside down on the seat and found the perfect spot for the legs, then stuck the block to the seat. This became the alignment jig to drill each hole, and every stool leg set fit perfectly to its seat. We made sure to have a flat spoil board under each through-cut hole because the bottom of the seat as we drilled it is the top of the finished seat, and we didn't want to have any chip out. After a whole bunch of sanding and a simple oil and wax finish, we really liked the way these stools turned out. We didn't make a plan for them, rather we just found the angles that we liked and made jigs to make them all the same bar height. We'd love to see your take on Matthias's three-legged stool design, whether they're bar height like ours or the original height from Matthias's plans. So send us some photos and show us your tips and tricks. We promise to show the method we use to alter our diamond-shaped template for vertical use, and while you will never need to do this now that we have the vertical template holder adapter, you might want to create a custom template someday and might need to know exactly where to drill the mounting holes. So here we go. We started by sharpening the end of the spare 6mm guide bearing shaft, and we ground the knurled end off to a point, so the other end will still fit in the pantograph arm. The centering jig rests on the table to hold it in a fixed plane, then the template holder is centered using the 6mm guide bearing shaft. The template holder is locked, then we turn the guide bearing around so the sharpened end is toward the template, and we scribed a perfect horizontal line on the template. We sanded off the alignment tenon from the back of the template, then mounted it as close to vertical as we could using the bolt to secure it. Next, we verified vertical using a square to guide the pantograph exactly vertically. We then put a block of wood on the table to raise the pantograph and sharpened guide bearing shaft within the range of the top slot of the template holder. Then we scribed a horizontal line to mark the location for a screw hole. The block was then removed and the template holder was lowered to mark the lower screw hole location. Then the template was drilled and countersunk for the template mounting screws. Of course, all this is unnecessary since we introduced the vertical template holder adapter, but we'd love to see how you use this information to do custom work on your PantoRouter. Happy PantoRouting!